Some of the questions that we had initially were, how do you want to have your camera set up when you're shooting? And the thing is these presets are like the other presets that we make, where they're meant for raw photos. So there's nothing that you need to do in your camera to have it set up correctly. I mean, the only thing you would have to like try to get right is the exposure. And when it comes to exposure, there's kind of a big debate, like, do you want to overexpose or underexpose? And the answer is, and it will always be, to just expose normally, because you're working with a raw file. There's no magic trick with overexposing it or underexposing it to get the right look with the presets. It's really the quality of light that you're shooting in. So I'm going to just start with one of my old photos here, because there's lots of different colors in it that will react to the filters in a very particular way. And one thing that I recommend doing, you don't have to do this, and you don't have to be very precise, but one thing I do recommend is working with the temperature to get the white balance like kind of correct. So that image was a little bit cool. So I just warmed it up just a tiny bit. You don't have to do that, but if you wanted to get, as close to accurate to how that film would have, worked in that situation, I find like getting the white balance in the ballpark is really important. So this wasn't too far off. I mean, it was like just a little bit cool. But say you were shooting in Kelvin and you left it like super, super cool like this, or way too warm, you'll still get a nice black and white look, but it'll be a little bit, I don't know, inaccurate, I guess. So I'm just going to start with this. I just warmed it up a little bit, and I'm going to run through some of the basic presets. Then I'm going to go through a bunch of other photos that were submitted by the community. And if you have any questions on how the different tone profiles work, or the grain sizes, or the filters, just let me know. And Nikki, Chad, and I will field those questions. So. All right, so this is Pan F in 35 millimeter grain. So Pan F is the deepest, richest, like darkest tonal range of all of the Ilford films that they make. There are some kind of specialty films that are even darker, but we want this is like from kind of their main pro lineup. And Pan F is one of my favorite film types of all time. It's like, I think it's the most brilliant film they ever made. And it's super rich and deep and dark. So just clicking on Pan F, you get a beautiful conversion. And I would say 80% of the time when I use Pan F, I'm done as soon as I click the button. I mean, there's really not much else to do. So real quickly here, what's the difference between 35 millimeter and medium format? I believe that the soul of black and white photography lives in the grain. So the grain structure and the grain pattern is really important. A lot of digital photographers, are against noise, any kind of artifacting. I totally get that. I am too. But if you go back to traditional black and white photography, the grain structure is kind of the signature of that black and white film. So we worked really hard to match the grain for each of these films to be as close as humanly possible within Lightroom to the actual film stock. And that required me to make both a 35 millimeter sized film grain and a medium format sized film grain. So this is 35 millimeter, meaning that the grain is larger. And if I click on the Pan F medium format, the difference is that there's hardly any grain. And Pan F as a film has almost no grain. It's a very, very slow speed film. So it's actually quite difficult to use it's quite difficult to actually use the real film. With digital, you can shoot at 400 ISO or 1600 ISO or whatever, and still get the look of Pan F at a higher speed. So that's a huge advantage to this. However, I do really recommend that everyone try real film, because there's a certain magic to it that you can never get in digital. Even though we get as closer than anybody, nothing can replace film. So this is 35 millimeter. This is medium format. I'm going to jump to the other film types real quick, just so you can see the grain. This is HP5. So you see the grain really kind of like popped out. It's also a much flatter film in comparison to Pan F, which again is like the deepest, darkest, richest film. So that's 35 millimeter HP5. This is HP5 in a medium format grain size. And then we've got the chunkiest of all chunky black and white films. Like the extreme other end of the scale is Delta 3200, which has an incredible amount of grain. This is in 35 millimeter, and this is in medium format for that type of film. So this seems like an insane amount of grain, but I am zoomed way in on this photo, and taken in context, it can be really beautiful, this really thick, chunky grain if you have the right photo. I'm going to skip ahead real quick here to this great photo by John Duenas, and I just wanted to show you the kind of situations where Delta 3200 looks really nice. So if you've got a photo with very few, I don't know, like not too much detail, not too many things going on in it, like simpler shapes and bigger shapes, Delta 3200 looks amazing because it basically is creating this beautiful texture on these kind of bigger areas in the photo. It's not, so it looks really, really nice in this photo because there's a lot of space here to see the grain and see how it all works together, and you're not losing any detail. But if I was to go to, I'm going to find something that's got a lot of stuff going on in it. Okay. Let me see here. Okay. This photo is, it's crazy. It's awesome. This guy staring at me from the back really freaks me out, but thank you so much, Cecily Banow, for this photo. I'm going to show you an example of where Delta 3200 is too much. So if I use it on this photo, the grain is now distracting because it's so thick that it's kind of getting lost in the foliage around them. And that's where I would not use Delta 3200, but I would use it on an image that's got simpler, bigger shapes in it, like this really beautiful portrait by John Duenas. Okay, so do we have any questions so far?
Nope.
Have anything from, okay. All right, let's keep going. So back to my original photo here. I'm gonna just close this out real quick. I would personally edit this with Pan F. I think it looks beautiful. And you can also play with the optical black and white filters. So in traditional black and white photography, you would actually put a filter on your camera that was like either red or green or yellow, and there are other colors too, that actually change the light coming in, hitting the black and white film. And black and white film is actually very sensitive to color. It just produces a monochrome output. So reds will be a certain level of, between white and black, and greens and yellows and blues. And the combination of how those different colors are represented on the black and white film is kind of also the character of that film. But that can be influenced by putting an actual colored filter on your lens. Ansel Adams did it with a red filter, and you would get those extremely black, dark skies. But you can also use a green filter, for example, to make foliage pop out, look brighter, almost like infrared. And you can use a yellow filter to make skin look really good. So in this image, she's actually wearing a red dress, so I thought it'd be perfect to show you kind of how the filters affect these kind of main color groups here. So if I was to use the red filter, you get a completely different image than the one before. So this is no filter, and that's a red filter. If I was to use a green filter, you get, again, a completely different image. And if I was to use a yellow filter, you, again, get a completely different image. So with the yellow filter, I'd probably bring the exposure down just a little bit. The yellow filter looks beautiful on these guys. If I wanted to really bring out the dress, I would do the green filter, but I think it's a little too much for this photo. But yes, that is how those filters work. And then the last kind of main component of this are the paper types. So when you're printing in the darkroom, I think, so what makes black and white photography beautiful to me is how the tones are represented in each film. So how it's sensitive to red and other colors, and that affects the tone. The second part is the grain. The grain is really a huge part of the signature of that film. And you can really get into grain and really like start to love certain feelings, you know, from different grain, from different films. So that's the second part. The third part is, and this is lost on most everybody now because unfortunately there's not that many darkrooms for people who even know how to use them. In the darkroom, the way that you actually print the black and white negative is really important. And the paper that you print on can have a big effect. So I have also emulated two of my favorite Ilford film type or paper types. There's a warm tone paper, so it gives it just a tiny bit of warmth, and it matches up exactly to the actual Ilford warm tone paper, which was hard to get a hold of. And then there is the cool tone paper, which gives it a little bit of a cool look compared to, you know, just using a standard paper. So I'm going to go back to just the neutral one. So that's like using the preset straight up, no paper type. And then this is the warm one. I'll zoom in here. This is the warm one, the warm tone paper, and then the cool tone paper. So there's some very subtle like split toning happening to get the paper type correct. So.
I have a question here. They asked which values are set in the Lightroom grain generator.
What values are set?
Is that like a?
That's part of the preset.
All right, so that's sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see there are only a few controls within grain. I should probably actually hide some of this stuff. Sorry, everybody. But yeah, basically, yeah, I'm using what I can from the grain controls in Lightroom to get as accurate a grain as is possible in Lightroom. So even though there are only a few controls, they have to be set exactly. And then also I'm setting them not only for 35 millimeter film, but for medium format. So doing everything twice. Yeah, I hope that helps that question. Okay, so moving on, I'm gonna just kind of roll through this again. So the light in this image is already really nice. She's facing a window with a little bit of a reflection on her back from another wall. So using like Pen F looks really beautiful in this kind of situation because we've got a lot of nice contrast in the image already, but nothing is really blown out or blocked up because there's a little bit of light reflecting on her back, and we've got window light, so she's nicely separated. Now remember, she was facing like an orange-yellow wall, so knowing that, if I was to use like the yellow filter or the green or the red filter, especially the yellow filter, is going to totally change this image. So this is with the yellow filter. In fact, I probably have to bring the exposure down just a little bit, but it's a totally different image with the yellow filter. It's been really interesting trying to teach people that there are these filters and how they work, because when you say color filter for a black and white film, it doesn't seem to make any sense. But again, I can't stress enough that how important it is how when you alter the colors coming into a black and white, actual black and white film, you're changing how that film is going to render the image completely, because it's rendering tones across the spectrum. And for example, if you put on a yellow filter, you're changing how yellow is transmitted onto the film, or in this case on the sensor in Lightroom. So this, I'll go back to the, so this is like straight up Pan F. This is how Pan F would render this scene. But if I was to put a yellow filter on my camera, if I was shooting film or digital, you would get a totally different image. So I'll just put these up here to compare. Yeah. Okay, so on the left we've got Pan F straight up, just normal, and on the right with a yellow filter. So very, very different. Totally different looks. I figured that, let's see, how many looks can you get? I think you can get like 104 looks or something, or 108 looks from the Ilford pack if you use the combination of all the things that we provide. So not only do we have like the optical color filters and the three kind of main base film types, we've also got all of the tone profiles. So I'll show you that really quick. Okay, so tone profiles come from the Fuji Frontier scanner, and they are ways of controlling highlight and shadow in an image in very, very subtle ways that don't really destroy the image or make it look digital. And those are also in every preset pack that we make, and they're specific to that film type. So in this image, if I did all hard, I am increasing the contrast in both the shadows and highlights, hence the name all hard. The opposite of that would be all soft, where I'm trying to expand the tonal range across every part of the tonal range. So I'm bringing out detail in the black areas, and I'm bringing in detail from the white areas. So think like HDR, but not ugly, terrible looking HDR, more natural. And then there are all these settings that are kind of in between all hard and all soft. So you could do highlight hard. That just means that the highlights are a little bit brighter, leaving the rest of the image alone. Highlight soft is just bringing in detail in the highlights without touching the rest of the image. Shadow hard is bringing in or making the shadows darker and denser, so not having as much detail in the shadows. And shadow soft is the opposite. So shadow soft is actually bringing in detail into the dark areas without touching the highlights or midtones. All right, so I will do a few more edits here and wrap it up. Let's see. Let's do this one really quick. So in this image, this is a JPEG. Yes, you can use these on JPEGs, but I wanted to use this image to demonstrate something again. So as you can see in this image, there's huge areas of green, bright red, and there's blue, like in her dress. And then you can see her skin. And I'm going to show you how the different color filters affect this image to make it completely different each time. So I'll show you Pan F real quick. So this is an example of where I think Pan F is too much. It's a little bit too dark and moody. You could kind of make it work by increasing the exposure a little bit, but it's already kind of a high contrast image. I'm going to go with HP5 on this image because I feel it's like the perfect balance of everything. So HP5 and 35 millimeter, you've got really beautiful grain throughout the whole image, and I'm going to show you the red, green, and yellow filter, and you'll see how it changes. So this is with the red filter, not too big of a change. This is with the green filter. So a lot of things just changed in the photo. It's kind of even hard to like kind of put put a word to exactly what.
Zoom in a little while you do that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll zoom in.
You can really see it in that section.
Okay, so this is, I think you see it in the flowers more. So this is no filter at all. And then if I did the red filter, you see a little bit of a change, and the green filter, a huge change. If I did the yellow filter, you'll see that her skin starts to kind of look really like even better, like kind of glow a little bit. And that is actually what the yellow filter is for, is to make skin look really nice. So I just wanted to kind of demonstrate that really quick. And all right, so now on to some community photos. I edited this one for the group already, but it was kind of a really fun one to edit because it involved a lot of different things. So this is by Rich Martinez. And I'm going to show you some fun tricks here that you can use. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you the power of the upright section in Lightroom, because I can't even work on a photo if the perspective is all weird. I just can't do it. But thank God we've got this upright. So, whoops, we don't want that. Okay, so we're just looking here and seeing like, okay, full's making it look crazy. Vertical looks crazy. Auto looks pretty good, but we're gonna grab this like little honeycomb thing here and we're gonna make it perfect. So you basically find a few straight lines in the photo. So I'm gonna take kind of the outline of this church here. And you just kind of are tracing. We'll see how good we can make this. Okay, we need one more line. Oh man, this church is kind of crazy looking. I'm not quite sure where to draw this last line. Let me see here. Maybe along here. No, let's try it across here. Oh man, you're seeing an upright fail right now. Well, let's constrain the crop, rotate it a little bit. All right, so we've got the church like kind of roughly within the realm of the physical laws of the universe here, and it looks better. Unfortunately, the bride and groom are a little bit cut off here, so I was very excited to show you that. I'm just going to do auto. We're going to call it good. We can talk all about the upright like honeycomb tool there later at a different date, but it is an amazing tool. And if you watch any of the other editing videos I've done, I use it all the time. All right, so I'm going to start with Pen F. So this image, like again, Pen F is like the deepest, darkest blacks, the brightest whites. It's a little bit too much for this image. So people have asked, like, when do I use Pen F? When do I use HP5? When do I use Delta 3200? In a nutshell, if the image can support the high contrast of Pen F, like if I go to this image, for example, this is Pen F, it works perfectly. Why? Well, we don't have like a huge contrast range here. We've got really nicely evenly lit, a beautiful evenly lit portrait. However, on this church image, here's the original. It's actually a very high contrast scene. This is a raw image, so it's going to be super flat. But really, this is a very high contrast scene. So it doesn't really work too well with Pen F. So if you go down the line, HP5 is perfect for it because you've got kind of a middle contrast, nice deep blacks, but there's still detail like in their faces here. I'm going to do HP5 medium format so that we don't lose any detail in their face due to grain because their faces are pretty small in the photo. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a red filter. So why a red filter? So earlier I said that Ansel Adams used a red filter for all of his like desert portraits out in the desert. What a red filter does in particular is that it makes blue skies turn black or really, really dark. And this can be great for bringing out detail like in photos like this. So if I just hit the red filter, you see it brought back in all the sky detail. And now the image feels more complete. You've got good detail throughout the image. It's still really dynamic. There's really dark blacks, really bright whites, nice midtones. So it's looking pretty good. You'll notice that the black and white set is super, super easy to use. We're not messing that much with temperature or tint. It's like by far, if you're just kind of getting into Lightroom and you want to get a real film look without, basically any effort, the black and white pack is the way to go because you're not worried about, getting the tint exactly right to get, skin tones just perfect. This is giving you the beauty of these films, in just like a few clicks, and they look amazing. So let me move on here. Come on, Lightroom. All right, so let me see here. What would be a fun one to do? Well, I've edited this one earlier, but I really liked it. It was just a really nice, like, quiet moment. So this is by Kayla Holmes. This is with a Nikon camera, so I'm going to go to the Nikon version. I'm going to go through like Pan F, so you're going to see like kind of how punchy Pan F is. When I edited this image originally for the group, I was going to go with Pan F because that's just my favorite of all time, but I ended up with HP5. This is an image where, so it was shot at, so it's a 50 millimeter image shot at f1.6. And what happens when you shoot any lens pretty much wide open like that, so like at a very, very, very low aperture, like 1.6 or 1.4 or 1.2, you get a lot of vignetting. So the first thing I do when I see a lot of vignetting and I want to get nice even tones across the image is I just click on the lens correction on tool, which is also included in the Ilford presets. And that kind of evens out the exposure across the image. So this is before and that's after. And that gives you a nice, very like editorial look. Medium format cameras, actually a lot of film cameras, the lenses are so well designed, especially medium format cameras, that you don't have that much vignetting. So it was very important to me to get that into the presets as well, so you can have a really nice flat, optically flat starting point. So I just used that. I'm going to do, again, I'm going to use like, I'm going to see if auto is going to work in this, or maybe full, to kind of even out the perspective. It's important to hit constrain crop, otherwise you'll have all this white space around your image. And I'm going to try to get a little bit more of the urn in here. There we go. Okay, so where are we? Where are we at here? So that's Pan F, lens correction on. We're going to do this in Pan F this time. And this image could use, I think, highlight soft. So that brought back just a little bit. I don't even know if you could even see it hardly if you're watching this, but it brought back a little bit of detail in her dress and a little bit of detail in the building. And the last thing is, I'm going to try the red filter here. Okay, that's really nice. So sometimes it's hard to see what happens when you use the red filter or any of the filters, but your brain says something major happened, but then you can't really pinpoint exactly what. When I use the red filter, it brought back in some definition along the steps, which make them look really, really nice. A little bit of detail up in the trees here, and a little bit of detail in her face that wasn't there before. So this is me being particularly picky, but this is no red filter, and that is with the red filter, and that would be, for me, considered complete. Like, this image is done. Do we have any more questions, or should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up.
All right. So one thing that I wanted to remind everybody is that for Ilford Photo Week, if you are already a current customer of Mastin Labs, if you go and log into the website, you can get the Ilford pack for 20% off. It's kind of a customer reward that we're doing to really celebrate black and white photography this week. If you're not a current customer, we kind of figured out kind of a hack for this, where if you go and buy something else and then come back and log in, then you could also get the Ilford pack for 20% off. So something to consider. It is by far, I think, our favorite pack in the office, and anyone that I've turned on to the Ilford pack has said that it's been their favorite pack for any black and white they've ever done. So I encourage you to try it. It's beautiful, and it's super easy. So, okay. What did you say?
Join the group.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you want to see your photos edited with Ilford.
Yes. Join the group. Join the Mastin Labs group if you want to see your photos edited with Ilford. There's a little Dropbox link, and I've been pulling photos out of that people are submitting and editing them and putting them in the group. Also, our incredible group members will volunteer too. So it's a really great group. So that's it. Have a good day. Happy Thursday.